Not everyone likes the concept of sin, but without a robust understanding of what sin actually is, Christianity makes no sense. Hello, I'm Stuart Baskin, pastor of First Presbyterian Church of Tyler, Texas, and this is your daily devotional for Saturday, June 4th, 2022. Some years ago, one of you reported to me that you overheard some visitors in worship who were sitting in the pew in front of you whispering loudly after one part of the service. It seems they were put off by the prayer of confession. They found it rather harsh, to the point of being offensive. Needless to say, we never saw those visitors again. And in another church I've served, a choir member, a longtime member of that congregation, approached me about a minute before we walked into the sanctuary for morning worship, asking why in the world we have a prayer of confession in the first place. I don't do any of those things, he said. I don't sin. Needless to say, I was stunned and speechless. I've even had people in social situations and in family gatherings challenge me about the whole idea. All of which illustrates the fact that the concept of sin is uncomfortable for many people. For them, it sounds a little, judgy and antiquated, a throwback to an earlier day. But is sin an outdated concept, or does our understanding of it need a bit of an overhaul? You probably already know what I think. Our common understanding of sin is thin, brittle, unable to stand up to scrutiny. But that's not because sin itself isn't real. It's because we don't like to think about it or talk about it. So here's the deal. The Christian story is built in part on the reality of sin. Take away the idea of sin and Christian faith begins to crumble. Maybe that's part of what's happening to the church in the contemporary world as fewer and fewer people identify with Christianity and even fewer still actually practice the faith. Looks like they just don't take sin seriously. Let's be clear though. We shouldn't prop up a concept like sin just to justify the existence of the church and of the Christian faith. If sin isn't real, so be it. But as I suggested yesterday, Christian faith is a way of construing God, understanding God, the world, and our place in it. We hold to the faith in large measure because we believe it does a superior job of explaining the human condition. The concept of sin helps us come to terms with why evil exists in the world, and even why we continually do and say things we wish we didn't. Paul perhaps said it best in Romans, where he exclaims, "So I find it to be a law that when I want to do what is good, evil lies close at hand. For I delight in the law of God in my inmost self, but I see in my members another law at war with the law of my mind, making me captive to the law of sin that dwells in my members. Wretched man that I am, who will rescue me from this body of death? Thanks be to God through Jesus Christ our Lord." What Paul manages to do in this brief snippet from a much longer discussion of sin is, first, to capture the essence of the common human experience of feeling that one's actions just don't match one's intentions, that one continually says and does regrettable things. Maybe it's a harsh word, a hurtful comment that we immediately regret. Maybe it's an act that we do when no one else is looking that we look back on with shame and regret. Or maybe it's that inward experience of knowing that while someone else may look at what we do with approval, we know our true intention is ego-driven. Most of us, if we're really honest with ourselves, have these moments. But Paul also manages to link sin with grace. And that's the critical point here, isn't it? We talk a lot about grace in the church. I preach it all the time. But for grace to be grace, there's an assumption that there is something wrong for which grace is the answer, the corrective. If there's nothing to correct, why is there forgiveness? If there's nothing to forgive, of what use is grace? Or to put it most pointedly, If sin is not real, why in the world did Christ die? We believe that sin is real and that it infects every bit of us and every one of us. The reality of sin explains why there is evil in the world and even why in our own lives we continue to experience a disconnect between our intentions and our actions. We believe that on our own, we are powerless to overcome its most far-reaching effect, which is our estrangement from God. And we believe that in Jesus Christ, God has acted decisively and graciously to save us, which is to say, to rescue us from our estrangement and to reconcile us back to God. To put it in simplest terms, if grace has any meaning, then sin must be an underlying condition. And now may God continue to bless you and keep you in all that you do this day and in all the days ahead.